The ending of the Goblet of Fire book might be one of my favorites in the whole series. Why? Well, it's the first time that we really start to see things come together. Unresolved subplots finally get resolved, Dumbledore finally sets into motion his plans, and the second edition of the Order of the Phoenix begins. In fact, I'd say that these final chapters are some of the best Dumbledore chapters that we get in the first 4 books. But the movie? The movie couldn't be more different. It zooms from one moment to the next, hardly lingering long enough to resolve the issues at hand. Have you ever wondered what happened to Barty Crouch Jr.? Did you know that we see Fudge and his first signs of doubt at Harry's story? Did you know that Harry got 1,000 galleons as prize money for the Triwizard Tournament and then gave it away to some of his closest friends? Well, if these details are new to you, or if you're just a Potterhead like me who likes to relive these epic stories, then you'll love this video. Because today, we're going to turn through the pages of the last 3 chapters in the Goblet of Fire and dissect every difference between the book and movie, revealing all these key moments that got changed or left out. My name is Gibby, and welcome back to episode 59 of Movies vs. Manuscripts, Harry Potter edition. Welcome back to Fact or Fantasy Harry Potter. If you're new here and you like to watch Harry Potter lore videos and breakdowns, then leave a like and subscribe, as I release new videos every single Wednesday. As always, I want to shout out Jason, Joshua, Timothy, Robo Steve, and the rest of my incredible Patreon and YouTube members who help make these videos possible every month. This is the final episode of our journey through the Goblet of Fire. So if you're new to the series and you'd like to go back and watch the episodes that you've missed, I've left a link to the series playlist in the description. Per usual, I'll cover all the changes across the 4 major categories of characters, timeline, location, and plot. But first, let's recap what happened in these final scenes of the movie. That way, they're fresh in our mind for the analysis. Picking up with where we left off in the last episode, we see Harry and Cedric drop back into the middle of the stands in front of the maze. The crowd cheers as Harry lays there on Cedric's body, and quickly things turn sour. We get one of the most emotional moments from Amos Diggory, and then Harry is led off by Mad-Eye Moody. After being taken to his office, Harry is questioned by Moody, and he slowly realizes that something is wrong. Moody reveals that it was he who orchestrated the entire evil plot. But before he can kill Harry, Dumbledore bursts in, Snape force-feeds Moody a truth potion, and Harry watches as Moody is revealed as Barty Crouch Jr. The real Moody is in a trunk in the office. After getting the truth from Barty Crouch Jr., the scene cuts to all of the students in the Great Hall as Dumbledore gives a speech and tells them what happened to Cedric Diggory. Then the movie cuts again, and we see Harry in his dorm. Dumbledore walks in and talks with Harry, learning about him and Voldemort's wands connecting. Then the movie cuts again, and we watch as all the students are saying their goodbyes to the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang students. And the movie ends as the trio walk arm in arm to the edge of an outlook and watch the other schools disappear. So now, with that in mind, let's jump into our differences, starting with character, timeline, and location. As for characters, we're missing quite a few people, who either are directly involved in these chapters or they're just mentioned by name. Those missing people are Winky the House Elf, Rita Skeeter, Sirius Black, Cornelius Fudge, Molly, Bill, Fred and George Weasley, Ludo Bagman, and Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle. Obviously, Fudge is shown, but he is much more involved in the book, which you'll see in these chapters. In fact, it might be some of the most impactful moments in the series so far. As for timeline, I've got nothing other than my usual change that I mention in every episode. I'm getting tired of saying it honestly, so I'm thinking of just removing this category altogether for future episodes. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. But as you know, time is obviously condensed. While the book shares that there were weeks in between Voldemort's return and Harry going back to the Dursleys, the movie makes it seem like only a day or 2 in between events. And finally, we're missing a few locations, as the movie just skips from Moody's office to the Great Hall to the courtyard outside. But in the book, we have scenes in Dumbledore's office, the hospital wing, Hagrid's hut, and the Hogwarts Express, all of which are key details that are vital to the story. Now, before I go diving into those key details, I just want to remind you that I can't get into every piece of dialogue in these 3 chapters. This is especially true in this episode, as there are some very long monologues filled with explanations, as a lot of the subplots are being wrapped up and resolved. I'll try my best to share all the details I can and let you know the resolution to these subplots, but I can't cover every word, which is why I highly encourage checking out the audiobooks on Audible. You can use my link in the description to claim your first audiobook for free. It supports the channel and is free for you, so it's a win-win. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the plot changes and wrap up Harry's 4th year at Hogwarts. The beginning of these scenes, with Harry arriving back at Hogwarts, is actually quite accurate to the book. It's when Moody takes Harry away that things begin to change. First, like most differences between the book and movie, there's a lot more talking. Specifically, Moody is quite interested in how Voldemort treated the returning Death Eaters. You've got to remember that Barty Crouch Jr., the man impersonating Moody, is a devout follower of the Dark Lord and sees himself as Voldemort's #1 supporter. He is angry at the other Death Eaters for not being loyal to the Dark Lord all this time. He wants to hear that Voldemort didn't treat them well. Then, shortly after this, Harry reveals what Voldemort had said in the graveyard, that there is a servant of his at Hogwarts. But fake Moody just tells Harry that he knows who the Death Eater is. Then the story partially begins to come out. He shares how he was the one who fired the Dark Mark into the sky at the World Cup. He was the one who made sure Harry got clues to the tasks, and he was the one who turned the Triwizard Cup into a portkey. Another change, albeit a small one, is a detail that I actually really wish the movie would have included. While Harry is having this conversation with fake Moody, he keeps glancing at the faux glass in his office and sees the images of people getting clearer and clearer. We briefly see the faux glass earlier in the movie, but what the book explains better is the fact that the clarity of the people in the faux glass directly relates to how close they are to the owner of the glass. This was a clever way to hint at the fact that Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape were quickly heading to Moody's office as this conversation was taking place. Then it culminates with Dumbledore bursting into the office and stupefying fake Moody. Harry looks at the faux glass and sees the clear faces of Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape looking back at him. Then he turns around and sees those three people standing in the door. It's a clever little detail that isn't necessary, but obviously would have added more depth to the scene. Right after Dumbledore enters with Snape and McGonagall, McGonagall tries to take Harry to the hospital wing, but Dumbledore holds him back. He says that Harry needs to know what has happened and see who has put him through this entire ordeal. And we get a couple of key points that the movie left out. First, Dumbledore instructs Snape to fetch a truth potion and the house elf named Winky. Then he asks McGonagall to go get a large black dog who has been sitting in Hagrid's pumpkin patch and escort him to his office. Obviously, Winky is removed entirely from the movie, and Sirius isn't included in these scenes, but here in a bit, we'll see how both of these characters are involved. Oh, and a small change here, in case you didn't notice, is that Dumbledore used Stupefy, not Expelliarmus, so this whole time, fake Moody is knocked out cold on the ground. While Snape and McGonagall are gone, and fake Moody is knocked out, Dumbledore goes to the 7-layer trunk and opens it up layer by layer, using individual keys for each compartment. Finally, after reaching the 7th layer, Harry and Dumbledore peered in to find the real Moody, stunned and sickly looking, obviously having been controlled by the Imperius Curse for the last 10 months. In the movie, they don't find the real Moody until after the fake Moody has taken the Veritaserum. Dumbledore points out the genius of the plot, saying that the real Moody never does drink except from his hip flask, so it was too easy to hide the Polyjuice Potion in plain sight. And he points out the chunks of hair missing from the real Moody's head, where fake Moody had been taking pieces all year long. Then Dumbledore and Harry turned around and waited. They waited for the fake Moody to eventually turn back into whoever has been behind this evil plot all along. This fake Moody turned into none other than Barty Crouch Jr. Snape and McGonagall returned shortly after this, with Winky at Snape's heels. She flung herself onto Barty Crouch Jr., crying out in astonishment and grief as the man looked dead. But another small yet important change here is that Dumbledore took the potion and poured 3 drops into Crouch's mouth, and then revived him from his stun. I know this seems small, but one of the main things that fans point out during this scene is the fact that Snape empties the entire bottle of Veritaserum into Crouch's mouth. It's become quite the meme in the Potter community, but many people don't realize that the book never did that. Obviously, as Snape states, 1 drop is enough for anyone to spill their deepest, darkest secrets. So by dropping 3, Dumbledore was ensuring that they'd get the truth. And that brings us to our next change, which is of course relating to the dialogue. I won't dive into all the details, but I do believe it's important to note the sheer volume of information communicated in this chapter. Crouch shares his entire story. We learn about how Barty Crouch Sr.'s wife was ill and about to die. She loved her son so much that as her dying wish, she had Crouch Sr. orchestrate a plan to get their son free from Azkaban. Using Polyjuice Potion, the mother swapped with the son in the prison and kept taking the Polyjuice Potion until the day that she died and was buried outside. This is what made everyone believe that Crouch Jr. had died in Azkaban. However, Crouch Sr. had taken his son back to his home and kept him under the Imperius Curse for years, with Winky taking care of him. But Winky loved the boy too and vouched for him to be taken to the World Cup. This is where Crouch Jr. exercised his will and resisted the Imperious Curse just long enough to cast the Dark Mark. And an interesting detail here that the movie never covers is that he was stunned along with Winky, but Barty Crouch Sr. found him and hid him from the other Ministry wizards, knowing that he would be ruined if his son was found. And this is also where the rest of Bertha Jorkin's story is revealed, as Crouch Jr. shares that Bertha had found out about the Crouch family secret and knew that Crouch Jr. was being kept at home. When she was captured by Voldemort in Albania, he got that information from her and used it to his advantage. After the World Cup, Wormtail and Voldemort went to the Crouch residence, freed Crouch Jr., and enslaved Crouch Sr. under the Imperious Curse. But after Wormtail made a blunder, Crouch Sr. escaped, and that is what we read about a few chapters back. Anyway, that is the basic gist of Crouch's story, and helps us understand the importance of Bertha Jorkins. If you want to hear the whole conversation, again, I highly encourage checking out the audiobooks. After this astonishing revelation, we have another omission, which is yet another set of instructions given by Dumbledore. Which, by the way, I'm noticing that the movie really didn't do Dumbledore justice here. Not only is he a powerful wizard, but the books make it clear that he is in charge, organized, and has a plan of action for any scenario. Unfortunately, because of the condensed timeline of the movie, we just hop around and never really see Dumbledore handle any of these situations. A lot of Dumbledore's solutions come off-screen, as once again, the movie producers just assumed that everyone watching the movie had read the book and didn't need to see these details. But anyway, in the book, Dumbledore instructs McGonagall to stay put and watch Crouch, making sure that he doesn't escape. He then instructs Snape to go get Madame Pomfrey so that she can come take the real Moody to the hospital wing. Then he tells Snape to get Fudge after that and bring him up so that he can question Crouch. And finally, Dumbledore takes Harry with him to his office. And this brings us to a moment that's entirely removed from the movie. And that is when Harry shares the entire story of what happened in the graveyard with Dumbledore and Sirius, who was the large black dog that McGonagall fetched from the pumpkin patch. Obviously, you know what happened in the graveyard, so I won't repeat it here. But this is where Dumbledore talks about Priori Incantatem, which is a small moment the movie moved to later in the dorms as Harry is packing to leave. What I do want to communicate here, and is important to know for this entire section and the finale of the fourth book, is that everything is much more serious. Dumbledore is serious, Sirius is serious, and Harry still has a wounded leg, a cut arm, and has gone through a horrible ordeal. Thankfully, Fawkes the Phoenix heals Harry's leg, but still, this is one of the most traumatizing things that could ever happen to someone. And something I don't like in the movie is that the significance of this is just glanced over. Other than Amos Diggory's cry of grief after seeing his son, these scenes are pretty devoid of emotion. But all throughout these chapters, J.K. Rowling clearly communicates how serious all of this is, and Dumbledore knows it. He asks Harry to share the story with them in detail one last time. He does, and then Dumbledore escorts him to the hospital wing. Mrs. Weasley, Bill, Ron, and Hermione are all waiting outside, and Dumbledore instructs them to not question Harry and to let him rest. Sirius stays in dog form by Harry's side while he sleeps for a bit, and then he is awakened shortly after for the next key moment of these chapters, which is of course our next change. If I had to break these final 3 chapters into 2 parts, it would be 1, the reveal of Barty Crouch Jr., which we just covered, and 2, Fudge's reaction and the fallout of Voldemort's return. Unfortunately, we don't really see the Ministry fallout until the next movie, but in the book, we clearly see the direction things are heading, and it's not good. There are several changes in the second part of things, but the first one is that Cornelius Fudge brought a Dementor into the school as he went up to see Barty Crouch Jr., and without waiting, it performed the Dementor's kiss. See the issue? Fudge never got to question or speak to Barty Crouch Jr. Therefore, he never got that side of the story. Next, after hearing a commotion, Harry woke up out of his deep potion-induced sleep and saw Fudge walking into the hospital wing, demanding to see Dumbledore. Shortly after, Dumbledore himself swept in, and the conversation began. Dumbledore pointed out that without Crouch, there is no testimony as to these events, other than Harry's. Fudge says that he didn't need a testimony, as Crouch was clearly a lunatic. But then, Dumbledore hit Fudge with the truth. Voldemort has returned. And Fudge just didn't want to hear it. This is the start of Fudge's entire belief that Dumbledore is fabricating the whole story as a plot to take over the Ministry. Plus, with the Rita Skeeter articles that came out earlier on in the year, revealing Harry as a Parselmouth, which had previously been kept secret, Fudge has had a lot less trust in the boy, thinking that Harry is insane. And despite Harry and Dumbledore's best efforts to communicate this to Fudge, he would not believe it. The whole interaction ended with Fudge storming out. then stopping, storming back in, dropping a bag of 1,000 galleons on Harry's bed, and leaving again. Remember, the winner of the Triwizard Tournament got 1,000 galleons prize money, and we'll see what Harry did with it at the end. Honestly, there's a lot more I could say about this entire conversation, but it would just be too much. So again, I suggest reading this section for yourself to catch all of the juicy details thrown into the dialogue. For example, Harry names off all of the Death Eaters that he saw, and upon mentioning Malfoy, Fudge is highly offended, because Malfoy is one of his largest donors. And another detail is that as Fudge leaves, he tells Dumbledore that he'll be in touch to discuss the running of the school, as he believes it's time for the Ministry to get involved. And who do we meet in the next book? Dolores Umbridge. So anyway, this conversation is definitely worth a reread if it's been a while. After this, we have yet another set of Dumbledore's instructions. Molly Weasley is still standing there, and Dumbledore asks her if he's right in assuming that her and Arthur are on his side. She confirms that they are, and he tells them that they need to get a message to Arthur to silently spread the word about Voldemort's return without alarming the Ministry. Bill Weasley speaks up and says that he's on it. Then Dumbledore asks McGonagall to fetch Hagrid and Madame Maxime, as he has a mission for them, which we'll find out later is their quest to get the Giants on their side. Then Dumbledore instructs Sirius to reveal himself, as he's been in a dog form this whole time. Sirius does, and Molly Weasley lets out a scream. Remember, according to the general public, Sirius is a mass murderer. But you want to know who freaks out more? Severus Snape, who has been standing there this whole time. But with Dumbledore present, Snape is forced to confront the fact that he was wrong, and Sirius isn't on Voldemort's side. Dumbledore forces them to shake hands, and so begins the second edition of the Order of the Phoenix. Finally, Dumbledore's last order is to Snape, telling him to do what he must. This is intentionally left vague for the reader, but we know that Dumbledore is referring to Snape returning to Voldemort and acting as a spy. And with that final instruction, Dumbledore leaves, and Harry is left in the hospital wing with Mrs. Weasley, Ron, and Hermione by his side. He finally lets out some tears, and he offers Mrs. Weasley the Triwizard winnings, as the thought of keeping the money disgusts him. But of course, she refuses, saying that the money is his. Then the last detail of the chapter I want to mention is that right before Harry takes his sleeping potion and goes back to bed, there's a loud smack as Hermione slams her hand against a window, catching something in her right hand. We'll learn about this in just a moment, and it's an important detail, so put a pin in it for just a minute. Anyway, this brings us to our final chapter of the Goblet of Fire, as the final weeks of term wrap up and Harry heads home. Once again, almost everything has changed for the movie. In fact, I don't think there's a single thing that's the same. So what does happen? Well, first we read about Harry's days following the incident in the maze, as the Diggories get the full story and thank Harry for bringing Cedric's body back. He offers Mr. and Mrs. Diggory the winnings, saying that Cedric would have won fair and square, but they refuse to take it, just like Molly Weasley. Next, we read about how in the following weeks, Dumbledore had instructed the students not to bother Harry. So, to Harry's great relief, everyone left him alone until the end of term. We also learn that Mrs. Weasley asked Dumbledore if Harry could stay with them all summer, but he had said that Harry must go back to the Dursleys. Ron didn't know why, but said his mom mentioned that Dumbledore had his reasons. We learn later on in the series that this is because of a special enchantment Dumbledore put on the Dursleys' home, so that Harry would be safe there during the summer. At the Weasleys, he would be susceptible to attacks. But we won't learn about that for a while longer. Before the end of term, the trio visit Hagrid and learn that he and Madame Maxime are going on a mission, but he won't say what. Then finally, we read about the Leaving Feast, which I guess is the only similar part to the movie. Dumbledore gets up and gives a speech much like the one we see in the movie, but unlike the film, the book describes how they toast Cedric and they toast Harry for his bravery. At least everyone except Draco and his goons toast Harry. Then you have the goodbyes, which include Fleur saying bye to Harry and mentioning that she might be moving here to get a job. Then Krum comes up and says goodbye, and despite Ron's attitude towards him and Hermione, he can't help but ask Krum for an autograph. This moment of Krum also shows his true nature as a hater of dark magic and evil, as he speaks ill of Karkaroff now that he's fled. And finally, we have 4 more changes, all of which take place on the Hogwarts Express, which as you know was omitted from the movie. First, you know that pin that I told you to make earlier? You can take that down now. We learn that Hermione had caught in her hand none other than Rita Skeeter, who Hermione had learned was an unregistered, aka illegal, animagus. She could turn into a beetle. Harry then remembers how he saw a beetle outside when Hagrid was revealing his giant blood to Madame Maxime. And there was a beetle in the divination classroom when he passed out. And they had seen Draco talking into his hand outside, which was him speaking to Rita as a beetle. This is highly illegal, and Hermione had decided to use this against Rita, essentially blackmailing her into not writing any more bad articles articles in the Daily Prophet. But more than that, Hermione had trapped the beetle in an enchanted unbreakable jar. It's probably one of the darker things that Hermione has done so far. I mean, Rita's pretty bad, but abducting and holding her hostage may be a bit too far. Anyway, the next change is the fact that the movie removes a visit from Draco and his goons. Essentially, they stop by the compartment and insult Cedric, which then earns them some well-deserved hexes. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had cast spells at them all at once, before Draco could even react. And on top of that, Fred and George, who had followed them to see what they were up to, hexed them as well. Which brings us to our second to last change, and that is the omission of Fred and George's secret plot. After attacking Draco, the twins stepped into the compartment, carefully making sure to tread on the Slytherins who are now unconscious on the ground, and they began talking to the trio. Dying to know, the trio finally pry out of the twins who they were blackmailing all year, and Fred and George reveal that it was Ludo Bagman. They tell Harry, Ron, and Hermione that Bagman had paid them in leprechaun gold after they won with their big bet at the World Cup. The gold then disappeared the next day, and they tried to contact Bagman, but he wouldn't pay up. Then they found out that Bagman was in deep debt with goblins and had placed a massive wager on Harry to win the Triwizard Tournament, which is why he was always trying to help him win. Anyway, Ludo ended up having to run off to escape the goblins, who at this point were probably just going to try to kill him. Fred and George had lost their entire savings and weren't going to get it back. But that leads us into our final change of the entire book, and that is that Harry gave his 1,000 galleons winnings to Fred and George as an investment for their joke shop. Harry waited until Hermione and Ron had gotten off the train, and then he secretly handed it over to the twins, who refused to take the money multiple times. But finally, after Harry whipped out his wand and threatened them with it, they accepted. And that, my fellow Potterheads, is how Fred and George started their joke shop in Diagon Alley. A key detail that the movie glossed over and made many fans wonder, how in the world did these two kids afford a prime location in Diagon Alley? Well, the answer is they had a 1,000 galleon investment from Harry, which helps a lot. And it's also why we watch Harry get free stuff in the Half-Blood Prince movie. And with that, we've completed our journey through the Goblet of Fire. So far, this has definitely been the hardest movie to get through, as there are just so many differences. I think most people are aware of this, as the Goblet of Fire is the least liked for a reason. It condenses one of the largest books in the series into a regular movie runtime, which just doesn't do the story justice. It's fun for entertainment, but personally, I like the details, subplots, and small moments that round out the wizarding world and make things feel real. But what about you? Now that we're done with this movie, what did you think? If you're new here and haven't watched the whole series, be sure to use the playlist on my channel to catch up on all the episodes you've missed so far. I've already done movies 1 through 4 now, and we're gonna get ready to jump into the Order of the Phoenix in the next episode. There are dozens of hours worth of content for you to enjoy, so don't let it go to waste. As always, thanks for hanging out with me and letting me yap about the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Without all of you, this series wouldn't be possible. So I just want you to know that I greatly appreciate all of your support. For now, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode, which will be the start of the Order of the Phoenix.